We're live.
Nope. Nope, didn't work. Oh well. Now we're 2 for 2.
Yep. So
I
tonight,
have I have noticed that we're live.
yeah,
Yes, we are.
we are. At least we didn't have a huge conversation before we clicked the button.
Well, what
Yeah,
started
take
off the conversation with we were having about infusoria and all that is I was talking with Mike about breeding egg layers, and I really didn't. I read the books and things, but I'd never bred egg layers when I was breeding the Odessas. When I first started breeding the Odessas, I was at a show where Mike Shadle was selling books. He used to go to shows and conventions with his car full of books, pull a trailer behind him full of books. So anyway, I went up to him and I said, "Hey, can I go through your books and look for books that are, specific about breeding barbs?" And he said, "Sure." It was just the two of us. There was nobody there. And we were going through all these books and laughing because some of the stuff they were saying wasn't true. There was really important things being left out. And I had heard a rumor many years ago that a lot of the big book publishers, the last thing they wanted to do is put out books so that everybody can go and breed their zebra danios at home and not have to go to the pet store to buy them. So the books are, the information's usually true, but there'll be really important things left out. And so the most important one I remember was one that had said that, there's nothing you can do to the water to prep it before the fish spawn to improve your yields, and that's total nonsense. A good spawning is dependent on how well you prep the water beforehand with infusoria. And so anyway, I had stuff here to prepare to talk about that for anybody else here that's, what you guys do, and I'll tell you what I do here.
This is the part I've been waiting for because I think I know. Put it that way: vinegar eels, brine shrimp, that kind of stuff. But I've never done infusoria.
Yeah, well,
Very true.
when I for the longest time wanted to have like a culture of infusoria going, and then I could always dip into it and stuff. And what I came to find out after 17 years of this is that can probably be done, but it's more trouble than it's worth. I found another way to raise and cultivate infusoria that's perfect for when you're doing a batch of fry, but it's not something you keep going long term. For those who don't want to deal with infusoria, you've got vinegar eels. This is one of my containers of vinegar eels. I have about 30 of these downstairs, and then I date them so that they last about 5 months. There's pieces of apple in here, and it's kind of cloudy because it's full of vinegar eels. And then I just run them through. This trusty setup has been with me for 20 years. It's just a feta cheese container, a Glad container with the bottom cut out, and then you put a coffee filter in there. Pour the vinegar eels into here. The vinegar comes in here. The eels get into the coffee filter. Rinse them out in aquarium water, and then with a turkey baster, you can feed the vinegar eels to the fry. And a lot of times when you need infusoria, vinegar eels will do the trick. But the problem is that apple mom causes problems, and the water is not real clean and all of that. So I started looking into vinegar eels or the infusoria to find out, what I could do. So I was setting up bottles on tanks and starting them with hay and starting them with banana rinds and corn husks and all kinds of things. And I would get these smelly bottles full of, stuff going. And that it wasn't really usable, and it was messy, and I couldn't figure out, what people were talking about how they have cultures of infusoria going that they use, and I couldn't figure out what exactly they had in mind, what it is they were doing. So I did some reading about it, and I found out that when you get infusoria from a plant substance, it takes 7 days for the infusoria to bloom. So it's desiccated and dried out in the plant material, and then when you put it in water, by the 7th day it'll get waterlogged, and it'll all that kind of stuff previous. And then on the 7th day is when it blooms, and so you want to have your hatches happening when the infusoria is blooming, so as not to introduce pathogens or creatures into your fish room that aren't already there. it makes sense to use plant material dried from your own fish room. So I have a huge container that is full of duckweed that I pulled out of tanks for 20 years, and I have this
See,
little container in it, and it's full of ground up duckweed. And so when I get ready to hatch a batch of fry, I will put the duckweed into a tank with maybe 2 inches of water in it. I let it go 3 days. Then I fill the water level up. I put the divider in, put the females in, let the females take over control of the tank while the duckweed continues to fester for 2 more days. Then the male goes in, they breed, and the 7th day is the day the eggs are hatching. So that's how I've been doing it. Now, I've done batches without the duckweed, and it usually cuts my numbers back by about half. So that's how I use Infusoria. Is that?
I agree with Ed commented in the chat. Duckweed finally has a purpose.
Yeah.
I use it to cut down nitrates in my tanks, and also babies will hide in it. Duckweed definitely has a purpose. I didn't mean to jump in on you, Greg.
Oh, I didn't hear what was said. Sure,
So
no problem.
I put in the comments. See, duckweed does have a purpose. You know, my good friend who's really prominent in the community, specializes in quarries. He sees duckweed and he convulses. But when you're controlling the amount that's being produced, it has its purpose in an aquarium. And this is yet just another way. It's an easy, and it's like you said, and you're not bringing in other cultures and taking the risk of pathogens being introduced because it's coming right from your aquariums.
Right. You're not introducing anything. And using a 20-gallon breeder to breed, 2 tablespoons is all you need, and that's going to give you a real rich Infusoria culture that the young face when they first hatch. And their yolk sac is gone in a day, and they start feeding on the Infusoria around them. So that's how I've always done it, and it's worked out great. So the vinegar eels, someone just wrote me a couple days ago, and it seems there's somebody online, I don't remember the name of his site, but he discovered that you can raise vinegar eels like you raise microworms, and you don't deal with the debris from the apple mulm. And what he does is he uses oats like you do with microworms, pour vinegar in to soak the oats, maybe just a little bit above the oats, let it sit for 2 or 3 days, then introduce the vinegar eel cultures, and then the vinegar eels get really thick in this culture, and they climb up the sides, and then you wipe off the sides to feed them, and you don't have any of the contaminants that come when you're using the liquid stuff. So I set up containers, and I'm waiting to see if they're going to work. The first issue that comes up is that when I was raising microworms, the end of a container happened when it dried out, which always happened usually in about 2 weeks. If you've only got a thin layer of oats and vinegar to keep it moist, those containers are only going to last a few weeks, whereas these bottles last 5 months. So I'm thinking you're always going to have to have a few bottles around going separately if you're using the containers. But I should start seeing vinegar eels going up the sides of the containers within the next couple days. I set them up 3 days ago. So
one of the other things people are using besides potato or oats is they're using Rice Krispies.
Rice Krispies, really?
I heard that yesterday.
Yeah.
For substrate?
No, for the worms.
For the
For the worms.
That's
Instead of
the substrate for the worms?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have my concerns with that, with the sugars from that.
Yeah.
I would just be concerned about how cloudy it would make the water and how difficult it would be to work with the worms.
Yeah.
Just wipe your finger in there and make a culture and see what happens. That's
Yeah.
what I do.
Because a lot of people use instant mashed potatoes too.
I've tried that, but I've always liked oats best.
Which do you like the best?
I've liked oats best when I'm working with microworms and things like that. And I get it to a consistency, a little watery, but not sodden. And then that's the way I've done it. I guess that's one of the old styles, and it's just worked for me. I should tell you folks and be honest with you, I'm terrible at keeping cultures, so there's very few live cultures I feed. I feed live baby brine shrimp and take care of that daily. The only other live I do are white worms, and a friend showed me a really cool way of culturing them that's a lot cleaner just by using sponges. What it is for me, it's difficult for me to, I'm terrible at maintaining the cultures. So what I do, I have a couple live sources I use, but I predominantly do a lot of frozen. I do a lot of frozen.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I should be better at doing live foods.
Same here. I agree.
Periodically, I'll try them, and it'll work for maybe a month or so. But I always get out of I can never consistently work them into my process. Baby brine is like consistent. It's easy.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
But other things,
I'm just being honest about
it just like it never works out, and then a month later it crashes.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
Curtis, what were the ones that Sean was talking about? The peanut beetles? Where you got to harvest, you don't want the beetle itself, you want their larva.
The larva.
That you feed.
I'm
He
bad
had a
enough,
little system.
I'm bad enough with white worms. Me collecting larvae is probably not going to happen either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a great deal of respect for anyone who can successfully culture large numbers and cultures of live foods, because at this point right now, I'm not doing that because honestly, for me, the time between working 12-hour days, coming home, and then having to work with the fish I do, I understand the importance, but for right now, for me, I have to get cultures from people that I trust and then just feed from those cultures. And that same thing happens to me, Mitchell, as I have them for so long, and then they just bottom out for me. So that's something I hope to get better at in the future. So I can appreciate anything you gentlemen share tonight, something I can learn from it.
I got a notebook right here.
Well, grindleworms can be pretty easy. Paramecium I found to be easier than I thought it was going to be. I thought paramecium would be a lot harder than it is.
Mm-hmm.
But there's two ways to raise paramecium. And the one is with the corn husks and all of that and constantly changing it. And that's how a lot of people do it while they have bad luck. But the way they do it in labs and institutions is they boil the wheat germ. Yeah. They boil wheat germ for like 30 seconds and then put that material into some distilled water, and that, you raise them up that way. But what I was just thinking when I was looking on my phone was I wanted to mention that one thing that's a lot of fun to do, and it's kind of a blast, is raising brine shrimp to adulthood. And I used to have containers in my fish room, like Sterilite trash cans full of brine shrimp growing out to adulthood. And I have the recipe here if you guys are interested.
Sea monkeys.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a friend that had a daughter that got sea monkeys for Christmas and brought her over to the house and says, feed some of your shrimp to the fish, and I didn't find out till afterwards that this girl had like 6 sea monkeys and she had them named and all this kind of stuff. It was pretty sick. But anyway.
You've scarred that poor girl for life.
Exactly. Well, in a 10-gallon container, you combine, so for anybody watching this to write it down, combine 1 cup kosher rock salt per gallon of water, 18 tablespoons of Epsom salts per the 10-gallon container, and 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of the brine shrimp cysts. 75 to 82 degrees, overhead light on 8 to 12 hours a day. Place the air stone less than 2 inches from the surface, no deeper. Feed spirulina powder. Alternate with baking yeast and quick acting, not the quick acting. And then feed just enough to cloud the water slightly. And then only feed again after the water is cleared, about every 2 or 3 days. Shrimp will reproduce by birthing and releasing cysts that will accumulate at the water line. Occasional water changes are recommended with water prepared of the same salt and Epsom salt concentration.
Well, see, I do mine a little different as I raise mine in full seawater, instant ocean.
Oh, okay, well, yeah. Well, that's going to be a lot more expensive.
Yeah, but I don't change the water very often, so just top it off with RO.
Right. I don't think I ever changed the water much when I did that. But
it's. I know everybody's going to say it's not that beneficial because they lose the protein, but if you feed them spirulina, all of that stuff, you're giving them a little bit back. But
Mhm.
when you put it in with the fish, you get that reaction out of the fish because they're hunting now.
Yeah.
Gets them back into that tracking, and they're chasing them all over
It's
the
it's
tank.
a form of enrichment. And
Yeah.
if you are gut feeding them, they're just
Yeah.
nutritious. So when they're babies with that egg sac, there's a lot of protein. But as they get older, you can gut feed them and they're passing that nutrient on to the fish. So you just have to make sure that you're feeding appropriate gut filled quality foods to live foods when you're feeding them. So yeah, that's absolutely not true. If you're gut feeding them, they're just going to have
Well, yeah.
a different form of nutrition.
Yeah, I think that people's misconception is that if you were to not feed them, feed the brine shrimp, if you were to not feed them and then feed them to fish, then yeah, they don't have extra nutrients. But if you are actually feeding them, then you're replacing the nutrients that they actually expended while they were growing. So
Right.
that's a wash then.
Well, one of the things too, a lot of people don't realize is they'll live on yeast. That's the worst thing you can feed them, and a lot of people feed them nothing but yeast, and there's very little nutrition in that. Very
I've
little.
been feeding them. You know, you sent me your recipe for your Daphne with the
Really?
paprika and everything, and that's what I've been feeding them. I just been till I cloud the water and walk away.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, Daphne are great. By the way, that thing on raising and brine shrimp is on the homepage of my website. Look at the brine shrimp hatcher instructions, and I think it's like 5 or 6, and it's all right there for anybody who was watching this and didn't write down what the recipe was. Now my Daphne is still doing great, you know. So the hardest part about Daphne is finding soy flour.
Yeah.
You can also use a high gluten flour too. I use like a 40% gluten flour, and that works as well.
Is that the red Russian Daphnia?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And those winter over in a tub outside your place, right?
This spring they'll be back. They'll be the 24th year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I was going to put some outside, but I have a pond right off my patio, and there's dragonflies over there all the time. And I'm thinking, man, what's going to happen with them dragonflies in this Daphnia? Am I going to have some aliens in there eating all my Daphnia?
Well, I just wonder if the dragonfly nymphs will eat the Daphnia. They might.
That's what I think would happen.
That's what I think.
So in my
That's my
experience,
concern.
you will have that some. They won't be able to take it all out. But the real problem is going to be when you do collect your Daphnia, you're going to get some dragonfly nymphs,
Right.
and they're going to go into your tank. And then a week or two later, you're going to walk by and see an alien in your tank, and those will eat your fish.
Oh,
So that's a problem. That's the problem I've ran into with dragonflies.
Yeah.
I made that mistake because I'll have crypts in a pot, have them in tubs outside with fish, and then I'll bring them back in and put the crypt in a tank. And the next day, I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Yep.
I've learned that lesson. So I may do it, but I'll put a screen over it probably. There's one for you. Purchased a Grendel worm culture starter, and they had dog food in there with the worms. Would it be better to feed something else?
Well, I can kind of interject a little bit with the dog food. Some of you may know I'm actually a pet nutritionist. I tutored under a couple holistic vets. If you're going to feed a dog food, you have to do a very high protein quality food. So I don't want to throw out names, but some inferior products would not be the best source for that. But you also need to feed other types of matter. Just giving protein to that all the time isn't giving a full nutritional diet for them. And then that passes on to the fish. So what I've always fed with those, I've done a high quality, high protein food. And when I'm saying high protein dog food, I'm doing a food that's minimally processed with a protein level over 40%. And then I'm adding in like spirulina flake. I've even added a few other things, and they'll graze at it, and it's giving them a complete diet. Feeding protein all the time. Remember, these small microorganisms are still organisms, and they require a varied diet. So by gut loading protein all the time, you also want to make sure you're doing some of the vegetable matter for them to consume. They will consume it, and that passes on to the fish. But it's like I tell people, you get what you put in. So if you're feeding a low quality dog food for protein, you're going to get that in the long run. You're not going to get a good process with the protein. So, anyone others thoughts?
Makes sense.
I just give a varied diet. A lot of people just constantly feed protein, and they're surviving, but they're not getting a full varied diet where you can pass nutrients from the other materials that you're feeding also to the fish.
If you don't mind my sharing a funny story, Doug Sweet up at the aquarium in Detroit had written a number of papers on raising Daphnia and feeding them, and his recipes were fairly complex and they were fairly complete, and they took into consideration all the things that you're talking about there, Ed, and the nutritional quality and everything else. And so I was listening to Charlie Grimes talking about raising Daphnia. And he used to go to a golf course, had a friend that worked at a golf course, and he would get goose poop. He says goose poop is the best possible stuff for Daphnia, and he put it in these tubs at his house where I guess his daughter was keeping ducks. And the goose poop would just, he would have Daphnia out the wazoo and just talk about how great it was. So I told Doug about this one time. And he was just like, "Oh my God, you're raising Daphnia on goose poop." And I actually had a friend that worked at a golf course. And he did that for me, and I had them going with that the first couple of years. And I said, "No, that's crazy." And so now today I use my recipe that I sent you, and they do great and all that. But there's a lot in it. I guess it's really that Daphnia really like, and you'll get wild Daphnia colonies out of it.
I was going to say, since Ed has all the bird experience, he's going to have to supply us with the bird poop. So.
Yep.
I deal with a lot of it. My gray goes at least 4 to 5 times an hour. You do the math.
That would be the box my wife opens when I'm at work. What did it say?
Yeah. What
Uh-oh.
the?
What are you doing, Mike?
Oh, I don't know. Change it.
Oh.
So there was one thing I wanted to mention about live foods and cultures that I'm sure all these gentlemen will agree with me on, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about it. Like, I can honestly say, and I'm not placating to anyone, any of these gentlemen that would send me a culture, I would be comfortable feeding right away. But if you don't know the source of where your products or your live foods are coming from, to be safe, you should isolate them just like you do your fish, because you have to remember you're putting a living organism in your aquarium. And I used to work at some of a lot of the pet stores in the area, helping them out a few hours a week here and there. If people saw the way some of these foods were kept, you wouldn't feed them to your fish because of bacteria, possible parasites and things. What I always tell people, these gentlemen here, if they were offering you live cultures, it's very safe to say you're going to get a good culture. But if you're buying different cultures all over the place, be mindful that you should be isolating just to make sure that you're feeding something safe and not introducing things into your aquarium.
Well, to add to that too, what I do whenever I buy cultures from someone else is I don't feed them to the fish at first. I raise them up and get them healthy before I start feeding them to the fish.
Yes, sir.
With blackworms, because stores don't feed them, they don't take care of them. So they'll get a couple of weeks of fish food before I even start feeding them to the fish.
So with blackworms, and I've got this from personal experience, because like I've said, I've helped out friends of mine in their stores. So I would go in a few hours a week. I wasn't there all the time. Not to sound disrespectful to stores, but a lot of stores conveniently forget about their blackworms and they're not being washed properly. And then you take the risk of a lot of bacteria and things of that nature. So I just become very careful with what I'm feeding. A lot of my friends are now culturing their own blackworms. You have control over that environment. So one of the things I always tell people, if you're going to a pet store, make sure that they're keeping those live animals clean for feeding.
Here's a question. How often do folks mix in live foods, and is there any risk of feeding live food too often?
There are a few live foods that you can that you can maintain fish on exclusively. Most aren't that way, but I know of one in particular. And I was thinking about this because people ask me when I give talks around, what is there one live food that's easier than any of the others, not counting brine shrimp that you buy in the store and hatch, but that's easy to keep and is really prolific and it produces in great numbers and all of that. And there is. And what that is redworms. Redworms are extremely easy to maintain. I used to have tubs of them. You can pull pounds of them out every couple of months. I used to feed them crushed egg layer chicken feed. So I would get the powdered egg layer chicken feed at the agricultural store, sprinkle it over the top of the tubs, and it would be gone in the morning. The earthworms would eat it, and they reproduce like crazy. The problem with them, why I don't have them today, and why they're probably not on everyone's number one list, is that to feed them to the fish, you got to cut them up with a razor blade.
Yeah.
And I used to laugh at that. One day I was going to have to face all these earthworms. So what I used to do was I would take them out of the container. I'd harvest them, rinse them really good, freeze them, thaw them, and then cut them up thawed. That's that works out well. But there's no better food for live bears. And like I say, supplementing most live foods with some kind of dry food that provides all your basic vitamins is important, I think. I don't think keeping fish, no matter what the variety of live foods is, and I've been dealing with this a lot recently with customers, people who get my live bears, who order my Godidas in particular. Ed can, I'm sure Ed can identify with this. He's probably heard me speak on this before. But everybody approaches their diet like we like diet, and they feed them nothing but meat.
Yes,
and then
sir.
the color goes away, and their
Yes,
health
sir.
deteriorates. And I was just like my Elion furcidens eat green beans just like the plecos. They literally eat a handful of green beans every day, like my plecos used to. And they're bright yellow and they're bright blue, and their colors are spectacular. And I have some here that are close to 4 inches long because they get that vegetable food. So anyway, those other things are necessary.
One of the number one issues with not meeting the nutritional needs of Goodeids is most of them are omnivore or herbivore, and a lot of people are feeding herbivore species too much protein, which backs up their digestive tract. And Nick, I'm going to say it causes constipation, and this causes bloat and other bacterial infections. So if you're not feeding an appropriate diet, this is what happens. So it's important to know what your fish are. Majority of Goodeids are either omnivore or herbivore, but you can give them some protein-based foods, but just not a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that ties back to earlier discussion, I've had many customers write me how their Amica splendens will eat duckweed and how their Doedroy will eat duckweed. Yep. I must feed my fish too much because I've never had them eat any of those plants, but customers say that happens, I imagine given a choice of green beans or duckweed, they choose green beans.
I've had Skiffia eat duckweed a little bit.
Skiffia herbivore, that mine will eat it.
Yeah, I was going to say Skiffia. If I feed brine shrimp to Skiffia tonight, tomorrow I'm going to probably put nori or something in there, and they'll just tear that up. I mean, it's not a live food, but it's very simple to get. It's very simple.
Yeah, Oscars will eat green beans, but Oscars will eat about anything you put in there.
Yeah. Fish, shrimp.
Crawdads.
Well, one of the things, if I could just talk for a minute about this and share this, Mike wanted me to talk about this, but like I said, I don't want to get too involved with something and take over a lot of the stream, but I'm going to be talking about this online. Over the last year and a half, I've been feeding nori to my Skiffia. And what I have found by feeding nori, my gold Skiffia or my Skiffia francese, before feeding nori, they were kind of bland, had a little bit of yellow. My gold Skiffias now have canary yellow because they're getting the proper nutrients. But when I'm feeding nori, I'm fortunate I have a resource that I can buy from wholesale that sends me nori that is not processed. It's just air dried, and then I break it down into flake. So it's not getting all that heat and all that, and I still have some living enzyme. I've been feeding that for a year and a half. In that time, I have not had bloat or constipation with any of my Skiffia, and their coloring is so much better. And I've been feeding that for a year and a half now. I feed it about 3 to 4 times a week, and then I mix up a few other little things with it. But I swear by nori for omnivore goodieds, but I feed it to all of my fish because it's a good source of nutritional fiber.
Now, the nori is seaweed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just for our viewers that don't know what nori is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a type of seaweed, and I've had people say, well, Ed, isn't there high salt in that? How do they deplete that? When fish are eating, as they're breathing, they're releasing salts in their body. So if there's an excess amount of salt in their body, they can release that. They keep their self balanced with salts. And I've been feeding it for a year and a half, and I swear by it for my goodeids. And I'll feed any of my fish other than a high predator fish. A lot of high predatory fish wouldn't. Some will eat that. I have Bologna socks that will eat it. But it's just a really good source of nutritional fiber. And I personally feel for any omnivore fish. Malawi cichlids. Malawi cichlids are prone to bloat because some people put too much protein in their diet. A herbivore's intestinal tract is longer to break down those plant materials. If you're putting a lot of protein and it's getting digested quickly, it's not getting absorbed properly and it can cause constipation. So that's why I'm kind of a stickler for the nori, and it just was, I was very fortunate to get the product I was and get a wholesale account with them that I can buy in large bulk. And it's basically just air dried, and I try to go with this minimally as processed a product as possible. And it's really working in my fish room, and some of the folks that are in the stream are seeing a noticeable difference with their fish also. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. Any other questions, feel free to reach out.
Now, Mitchell, what are you doing on your cories and whiptails?
So cories and whiptails have different diets.
Right.
Cories are generally going to be more on the insect worm sort of thing. So I'll definitely feed mixes of foods. Generally, though, it's going to be an earthworm pellet that I get from Ken's Fish. That's like maybe half of the diet spread out across the week sort of thing. But then I'm also mixing in a few other kinds of prepared foods as well as frozen foods like Daphnia, Cyclops, assorted things like that. So I'm trying to mix them up fairly regularly. But I will also periodically put in like a plant-based pellet, something like that. Maybe once every week or two, something like that. So I'm still mixing that in for cories. They need a mix of things. They'll generally lean more towards proteins like insects and worms, but you still need to like spread things out more for them. Whiptails, it depends on the kind of whiptail. Some of them are more herbivore than others, and some are more carnivore than others. So the ones I have right now are an herbivore that do like biofilm. So that's them scraping off of whatever they can when they're adults. I'll feed definitely more on the plant-based side for them. I'll do things like spinach, fresh spinach. Like you get it for like you're putting in your normal food. I'll clump up the spinach and put it into a clip and drop it in the tank for fish along with other things. For fry that are biofilm eaters, that in the case of some whiptails is super hard because you need to actually have the glass coated with a biofilm that actually has some kind of mostly plant-based things in it. So that's when they're first hatching. Some whiptails basically won't move. Like I did an experiment when I was first trying to work out how to deal with Sterosoma aurum whiptail. They get maybe maybe like including the whip, they'll get maybe 10 to 12 inches long.
Wow.
Without without the whip on it, maybe 8 inches long or so. When they first hatch, the fry don't move. They'll attach themselves to the glass. So I ran into an experiment one time where I saw one of them sitting on the front glass. So I drew with a marker a circle about maybe 2 to 3 inches or so around with it in the center. And it did not move from that circle for 2 days. Wouldn't do it. So it's feeding there. So if you don't actually have enough biofilm near where they decide to sit, then they will starve themselves. They won't move.
So it didn't move until it ate everything out of that circle, probably.
No.
They don't move.
No, they won't move at all, even if they eat all the food. So the theory is that in their environment where they come from, they are so afraid of being eaten that they would actually rather stay in place, and the high current areas that they're from are going to bring little bits of food to them. And it's like daylight, they're like constantly in the sun, there's things growing on it, so they will actually like starve if they don't move. So it's not that they're actually eating that area, it's that if you don't get food in that area, it will die. But after a while, after about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks or so, then they'll actually start to move around, and then they can actually start to hunt for other food. But when they're early on like that, you have to provide a biofilm everywhere. So I worked out a process where I put them in a 5-gallon tank with a sponge filter and a couple of air stones that are really hard flowing. And at least twice a day, I'll turn the sponge filter off and then feed them a mix of spirulina powder, a little bit of some form of a rapashi with a little bit of protein in it, and some Bacter AE, the stuff for shrimp. Mix that stuff up, put it into the tank, let the air stones just spray it around the tank for about half an hour, and it will actually coat the glass. And then you can turn the sponge filter back on, but you don't want to have the sponge filter taking the powder out of the water while it's being spread around. So you got to do that. I do that at least twice a day for about 3 weeks or so. At that time, they've started to move around, and I can start to do things like put aged oak leaves and things like that in there, and they'll start to transition over to that. But like that first couple of weeks or so with some fish, it's hard, and you have to do weird things.
Yeah, Regina Spotty, one of the breeders with the Greater Pittsburgh Aquarium Society, breeds whiptails, and she was telling me this about a year ago. She like, when you're feeding the young, if you don't do what Mitchell just did, you're going to have to make sure food is getting directly under those babies, or they're going to starve until they're ready to move out on their own. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. I'm like, they're cool fish, but the process he's explaining is a lot simpler. So that would make sense, and I think that would give you a better yield.
Yeah, there's been quite a few. Who was it was talking about that the other night, Curtis? Wasn't that Richard and somebody else?
Yeah.
About how if you didn't have biofilm ready for them, that they'd just
and he
starve themselves out.
He uses banana leaves because they get that biofilm very quickly, and it grows a ton of it on there. Put it right underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get them to sit on it, then yeah. With some of them, like when they first break loose from an egg, where they sit, unless you like continue to poke at them, that's where they're going to sit. Now, I guess you could like put it in there, and then if they didn't land on it, you could like anger them and get them to eventually move over. But I'm way lazier than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like what you're doing best. That's the way you're going to really make sure that they're getting what they need.
And if you're like prepared, like Greg was saying earlier, like if you know that a spawn is coming up, go ahead and do it to the tank and leave the sponge filter off. You want to just make the walls of the tank nasty, basically. Don't do water changes. Like continue to periodically add it in, and then before they hatch and you're ready to put them in, then do your water change so the water is clear, but the actual glass is coated in that biofilm. So do whatever you can ahead of time to get the tank ready if you know that it's coming.
Yeah, he sets the tube with the eggs on the banana leaves.
Well, so yeah, he's using a whiptail that actually lays in a tube. So like the one I do is like asterosomas lay on just a hard surface on the outside, so you can't move them, kind of thing. Like that's probably like a rhinolora carrier or something like that that actually lays inside of a tube, sort of like a pleco sort of thing.
Would that work with autos too?
Yeah, I think it would.
Probably, yeah. I don't know enough about how our autos actually like start, like where how they spawn, kind of thing. But I do know that they need the food instantly, so I could totally see that helping for autos.
They're a little bit more mobile than whiptails, but it would absolutely be an easy way to provide a food source for them.
If I can jump in on something that's similar, people have asked me about, looking for micro foods and what's easiest or what they can have access to, and they'll look to green water. Set a container outside and use green water to feed fry for some species, and that's fine. It works for a lot of species for people who are breeding like the really small rainbow fish and such. But to keep in mind, because I discovered this the hard way not too long ago, that when you introduce green water to a tank in your room because you're feeding something, it can spread throughout your room, and green water is a pain in the butt to get rid of in your room. And I don't like to use chemicals in my room. I have the algicides that you can buy in the fish stores are awesome. I mean, they work really well. But it's a pain in the butt when you've got over 100 tanks to dose them all to get rid of green water. So if you're using green water for something, then keep the tank separate and keep the net separate, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, and that's probably the form of infusoria most people are familiar with.
Right, exactly. Like I think people think that the fish are feeding on the actual free-floating algae. Most of the fish that are eating green water are working on the infusoria that are feeding on the free-floating algae.
I do feed some green water when I was working with rainbows. Now the fish I work with now, they can take baby brine shrimp day one. But when I was feeding my small rainbows, I was doing green water, but I was doing small amounts and multiple times during the day, also doing water changes. And Greg, you're spot on. Watch your equipment with what you're using between different tanks. So I had a special baster I was using for green water, and I would just do a little bit of a squirt a few times a day, frequently, but in small amounts to make sure they were getting. Rarely did I have any trouble, but you do have to be mindful with that, especially when you have a lot of aquariums like we do.
Yeah. So with rainbow fish, I actually do kind of almost the exact opposite. Okay. I do keep an isolation of things, but I will actually make a full tank fully green water and then put the eggs in it to hatch, so they stay in there constantly in green water.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
it's isolated, but they're always having food.
Right.
So let them do that thing. But you do need to pay attention, like Greg was saying. If you don't want it to mix the streams, pay attention and don't mix the streams.
Right.
Or bad things can happen.
One of the things a lot of people misconstrue green water as being unhealthy water. Um, it's full of good things for the fish to eat. It's a little unsightly, and you just don't want it to go way out of control. But it's a normal process, and a lot of the old timers that I talk with say green water is some of the healthiest water you can provide for fish. It's just unsightly. Um, but I've used it with quite a few species that I was breeding. And like I said, for what I focus on now, I don't need things. But I still have a tank of green water just in case I ever have a species that spawns for me that I think would benefit from it.
When you want to quickly create a body of green water by leaving a bucket or a container outside, what do you use as a starter?
I don't use a bucket. So what I'm doing in what I've noticed, I kind of lucked out with the tank that I have green water. I just got a bloom one day from fish with feeding. There's some of my babies I'm pretty heavy-handed at feeding, and I have to do regular water changes. I had a tank that got an algae bloom, and it just turned into green water. And I thought, well, hey, I tried getting rid of it for the longest time for months. Wasn't getting. I said, this is going to be my green water tank. So basically, what I add to it every so often is some biological and some dirty filters to feed that. And it seems to be working for me. But for me, it happened very organically, for lack of a better word. I didn't start it. It just kind of started on its own. And then I've just built on it ever since. And like I said,
starting green water is actually tougher than sometimes it should be. Because I had a friend send me some perfect fertilizer. He claimed was going to start green water quickly. Mm-hmm. It was a really cheap fertilizer, and it didn't really work. And I've been looking since we all have problems with green water, but if we want to create it, and we want to create it now, it's not as simple as just throwing some hay and some water and setting it outside.
It happened very organically for me, and I've just fed it ever since. And a couple times a week, I do dirty sponge squeezes and stuff like that.
Grass.
Joe's plants. Sorry, go ahead.
What do you guys do?
I used grass and a Job's plant spike.
So what I do is when I do need to produce it, because I'm doing rainbows or something, I do 2 5-gallon buckets, like somewhere in my fish room, like sitting on the floor. Fill them both with dirty water, used water, some sponge squeezings, things like that. Get them started. Put like a LED light on top of them and leave it on 24/7. And then I will get a high quality organic liquid plant food and put a few drops of that in both of them. And that will kickstart green water.
Okay.
I was
that makes sense.
Last time I made a whole tank of it, I used Greg's fertilizer. I just way overdosed it and left the light on.
Exactly. And then I just leave that light on permanently, and I will feed out of one of the 5-gallon buckets. And then when that one gets low, I will switch to the other one and then reset it. So I just alternate back and forth between the 2 5-gallon buckets.
Okay. Thanks. I've been looking for that. I mean, it's common sense, but I've wrestled with that forever, how do you create green water on the spot,
That organic, that really high quality organic liquid plant food is generally like so concentrated. Make sure you don't drop it on anything that you don't want it to stain, because it will stain it brown permanently.
Yeah, it's got so much iron in it.
Yep.
Well, and a lot of those fertilizers today, you got to be careful. My fertilizer comes with an anti-algae component to it, so it supposedly suppresses algae growth.
Oh, okay.
It probably does, but when you do 10 times the amount.
Yeah. I've been running the same thing for like years, so it's been forever since I've actually looked at trying to find a new organic fertilizer.
I've seen the joke spikes though. If you watch a bunch of Asian videos on YouTube that you can't understand, those guys take a styrofoam shipping box and set it outside, fill it full of water, and throw fertilizer spikes in there, and a week later it's full of green water.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And all kinds of other stuff, because it's like in Taiwan or somewhere.
Yep.
Any other questions, Mike?
Well, NC was wanting to know about the design of your Gen 2 Pleco caves.
About the what of them?
The Gen 2 Pleco cave.
Right.
He was wanting to know about the layout of them.
Well, I had them going with a manufacturer here in Denver for about 5-6 years. I was selling about 300 to 400 of them a year. And I placed a big order with them at the beginning of the COVID experience. And they went out of business and disappeared with my deposit. And I have not been able to find a manufacturer since that's willing to take them on. The problem is that I can't find somebody. People have offered me to make them again in other parts of the country, but unless you're willing to do the shipping yourself, then you add an extra shipping charge to ship them to me, and then you end up with a $30 Pleco cave. So it has to be someone that within a day's drive for me to make them for me, and I haven't found anyone to do that. So in the last year, I've been downsizing the business, and I've stopped looking for a manufacturer for that. But I looked actively for a new manufacturer for them for about 3-4 years, but didn't find anybody. To someone who's into ceramics, cranking out is that the other place called them Pleco houses, at 300-400 of them at a time. That's the last thing they want to do. And I was paying $11 a piece to the wholesaler for them. And then I was selling the big caves for 17 and the small caves for, I think I paid $9 wholesale for the smaller caves, and I was selling them for like 11. So there's not a lot of profit to be made. And then every once in a while you get them breaking in transit, so you're often eating whatever profit you had by sending out replacements. So they were a great cave and they worked really, really well and all of that, but I haven't found a manufacturer who could do it. I guess if someone wants to get into it, I could hook you up with the directions, what they're made of, how they're made. As a matter of fact, I've got someone right now in Salt Lake City who's claiming to do that, and I gave him permission, and he's been to 2 ceramicists so far, and they haven't been able to produce him a prototype that's close to what the Gen 2 cave looks like. It's made out of terracotta, but it's a certain shade of terracotta because I learned that the plecos won't swim into a cave where they can't see the back of it. So the interior of the cave has to be light enough that the fish can see the back of the cave, but not too bright that they feel insecure. And if it's too dark and they can't see what they're swimming into, they won't go into it. So
this is what he's talking about.
Yeah. So I can't. I'm trying to see. Yeah.
I got it from you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no, I don't have anybody making them anymore. So, unfortunately, but there's probably close to 2,000 of them out there.
I stole 2 the last time I was there.
Clupper.
I paid for them.
Curtis, Klepto Curtis.
I paid for them.
Greg, Curtis and me were doing the snow dragons.
Right.
We both have fry.
Awesome.
Not very many.
The proof in the pudding will be if those made for you and if their fry live. I got as far as you guys have gotten, but where I ran into problems was the next generation.
Well, we're a ways away from that, but we got one step closer.
Yep. They don't have very many fry, but I think mine only has like 5 or 6.
Cool. Okay. Let me know how they do, man.
And they're all white, every one of them so far.
But they're short fins?
Long fin.
Oh, they are long fin. Okay.
Mine just hatched, so they're only like 3/8 of an inch long.
Feed them lots of protein because the albinism requires a higher protein component to their diet. And also keep them in low light because they don't like heavy light. That'll also help their longevity. And good luck, man. Like I say, I've gotten them as far as to where I've gotten those to spawn. I've gotten 3 spawns out of that next generation, but then those young never survived. So I'll be sitting back here watching, hoping to hear how you do. I believe it's possible. I
Correct me.
believe it's possible. I got to the point where you got them. It took me almost 20 years. So keep it going. It just takes time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg. Did you not have? I thought I had seen in a video that you thought there may be an endocrine issue with
Yes.
the snow dragons. Okay.
Yeah, they hit it.
It could resolve. It just may take a few generations of working it out.
You need a mutation that doesn't have their endocrine system shut down once they hit the fish equivalent of puberty.
Gotcha.
And they just die. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say,
Great.
Yeah.
Richard's wanting to know the difference between a snow dragon and the snow white.
I didn't release any white dragons. I talked about developing a snow dragon simply because I was trying to get the whites that were thrown by the green dragons to reproduce and develop, as you guys are doing. So I never really sold any. So I don't have any fish that I can say these are snow dragons or these are snow whites. I know in the marketplace there's a line out of Germany. They call them snow whites. Those are generally short fin fish, and I'm really curious to find out how hardy they are with what we're talking about.
He has long fin snow whites.
Yeah, you can definitely find them.
But the issue is going to be what they came out of. Usually they came out of the L144. So the snow whites that came originally from the L144 are going to have blue eyes, and rather than pink, and they often will have some black ash-colored markings or spotting on them. They're rarely pure white. People are trying to breed for those pure whites, and the L144 are a lot hardier. So who knows? They may have longfin whites that were derived from the L144 out there. But those are from an entirely different line and combination of species than the green dragons are, and the fish that you and I have.
They derive from different bloodlines. Correct me. I can't remember what you said. The lines, how the dragon developed. It was from an L series, and you have to forgive me. Plecos are not my thing. That's the species that was utilized to do the green dragon is a completely different species for
Right.
the snow whites. So that's the difference. It's a mesh from different L numbers of plegos. I think that's what he was meaning. But I can't remember what you said the dragons came from. It came from a couple lines ago.
I believe it's the L336 and the L152 and a high quality albino longfin hobby pleco.
Gotcha.
Right, to come up with the L336s are known for throwing occasional green individuals, and so that created morph of those three species that mix. I got a hold of some of them, and then they were still a mishmash. There was somebody who was building them out, but then passed away, and his collection went up for sale at an estate sale. And so I figured out what he was doing. And so the first thing I did was get rid of the L152 markings, the white spots. So sometimes you'll see my green dragons that have white spots on them. Mine don't. That's the first thing I bred out of them. And, just trying to improve the green color and improve the color of the
I
finish.
don't either.
So, but they're a totally different parallel line to the L144s. The L144s look different. They're entirely different fish.
Okay.
Give him some fish water, Curtis.
Yep. That's all he wants, fish water.
He's already had about a gallon in the last hour.
Well, he's a
I know.
growing dog.
I was in a pet store once in Kansas City, and they had a potbelly pig that used to walk around the aisles of the fish tanks. And every once in a while, he'd reach in and start starfling and drinking water out of the feeder guppy tanks. It's like, oh my
Curtis's
God.
dog drinks about half that pond a day.
I think so. I'm going to have to hook an autofill line up to it. Auto water change the pond for him.
Yeah.
That's why I put the little fence around my pond outside, is he won't stay out of it.
Yeah, didn't he eat all your water lettuce?
No, he actually grabbed a hold of my water lilies and pulled them up out of the water and had them out in the middle of the backyard.
What type of dog?
He looks just like Old Yeller.
He's probably a lab mix, and they're notorious. They love water.
Yeah. Here's a
Oh
question.
yeah, Lumi.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and pull that up.
I had it.
Microworms eating fish fry.
That's when you have brand new hatched Odessa barbs or something. If you put microworms in there, will they attack your fry?
I doubt it. I have had situations where vinegar eels have killed off batches of Synodontis fry because the Synodontis come from Lake Tanganyika with water qualities usually up in the high 7s, and you put vinegar eels into the tank, it crashes
Turns it
it
acidic.
shocks the fry and then kills them. But I've never seen microworms feed on new fry. I don't know if anybody else has, but
I haven't either. If you see something like that, that would tell me that the fry were not doing well to begin with. I could possibly see a type of small micro worm or something eating them, but usually if it's a healthy fry, wouldn't see that happening, but stranger things have happened.
well, with microworms too, they're not an aquatic animal really.
Right.
They more of an air breathing worm, and they don't last long in the water. And when they die and begin to break down, they can kill fry pretty easily. That's one of the reasons why I use the microworms for the Synodontis, but I would never use them for the Odessas.
Mm-hmm.
With the Odessas, I've always used only vinegar eels or paramecium.
Here's another one. He's painstakingly aging his water. Is it extra work worth the benefits?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
He's only got 6 tanks and he's aging his water. Is it worth the work to get any benefit out of that? Like pre-age your water.
How different is your water after it ages?
I'm not sure if he's doing that for chlorine or if he's thinking that gets you some beneficial bacteria or what. Not sure.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
Oh no, real quickly, I can say that I just went through this path really heavy duty here in the last few years, in that I removed all the fish in my upper row tanks in my alcove area, and I made them all just water storage tanks for water changes. So that now my water changes for the alcove area, which is about 45, 50 tanks, is only aged water in that it's been sitting. I do the water changes every other day, whereas the water in the rest of my room gets changed every day. Those tanks in the alcove where they were getting that aged water, the difference in the fish was amazing right from the very start. I mean, to a lot, and the reason is because the water gets the opportunity to degas. It just has a lot of micro bubbles and stuff that allowing it to sit for 2 days allows to work off, and the fish have really benefited from it. So there's that benefit.
Yeah.
But other than that, once you've let it sit for more than 8 to 12 hours and the chlorine's dissipated off, you can use it.
Well, I have something similar that happens in my fish room. I'm off a well, and there's streams in the area proximity of my property that has sulfur in the streams. And although I do not have sulfur in my water, I have sulfur gas in my water. So I have to let my water age, and I heavily aerate it for it to gas off. And I do it at a minimum of 24 hours. So when I'm doing my automatic fish room in the next few months, I can't just put it up to my water system. It has to go into containers to aerate out. So there are some things that it will help gas off, but chlorine would definitely gas off. But you have to remember, some water in certain areas have more than just chlorine. There could be metal ions and things like that you have
Chloramines.
to chloramines and things that you have to pay attention to. But in my situation, like I said, I'm pretty fortunate that I have a well. Thank God I don't have to pay for water because that would be a lovely expense. But I have to age my water for 24 hours to get the gas out of that water. When I first moved here, I wasn't gassing my water, and I noticed, especially my Goodyeads, every so often I was losing one here and there. And it turned out what it was because Goodyeads need high oxygen content. The water wasn't gassing off. I was putting it in, and then now that I aged the water, I haven't had any issues with that. So that's why I have to let my water age because I need to get that gas off.
Sure, and that makes sense. Like that's what I say. Like it depends on like what is the difference in what you're starting with versus what you're wanting to get to. In your case, sulfur gas definitely makes sense. So that's what I was wondering. Like, what changes in your water is happening that is that you are thinking is beneficial for aging it, and
But
if they are, then you may need it.
he answered in the chat. His pH goes up. Like the next day goes from whatever to 6.5 to 7 or whatever his number is. It goes up.
That's interesting. I usually hear it goes down.
Yeah, it usually goes the other way. But
yeah, that's when you get into weird chemistry for buffering.
Yeah, so in his case, he's probably better to let it settle and get to an average number.
Yeah, that's definitely if it's not a huge jump, then you could do it. But if it's a pretty good size, if it's like from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 or something like that, you might want to actually like let it age. If it's like 6.8 to 7, that's generally probably not going to be that big of a deal.
No.
Depends on how much work it is for you too. Like, is it a real pain for you to age your water?
There's a question.
We just want to know if you can dry pothos leaves and use them for infusoria.
Which leaves?
Pothos.
Pothos plant.
Oh, the pothos plants?
Yeah.
It's not an aquatic plant. I guess you could. But my goodness, aquatic plants are so prolific and almost anything would work. I use Java moss, duckweed primarily, but Java moss also works great. Subwasser tang.
There, I've been feeding all my moss to my stupid crayfish. Now I got another use for it.
I found another plant that grows well in my fish room. I have Sawasser tang in clumps this big, and I didn't think they would do well, and it proved me wrong. So I have another one, and I really like them. They're great for fry.
Freshwater seaweed.
Yeah.
Well, people should know that Subwasser tang has a history. It first came into the hobby with a reputation of being very hard to grow. Because what happens with Subwasser tang is that when you first put it in your aquarium, it grows really slowly until it adapts to your water qualities. And that can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. But once that happens, then it just grows like crazy. I have it now throughout many of my tanks. But it took me a good 3 to 4 years before the batch that I had, a little tiny bit, grew to where it was about the size of my fist. But then once that happened, it's everywhere now.
I was told put it in a place and leave it there. Try not to move it around, and that's what I do. And it's growing like wildfire in my tanks. I have a tank where I have Harlequin rasboras that it's nothing but Sawasser tang.
Yeah.
So,
Adam, that's about consistent with the way mine work, except I don't have low fertility. Like, I don't have a huge enough group to produce more eggs because the eggs on a fireball, for the size of the cory, the egg is actually really big, so they just can't produce many of them. But they are very consistent about like that number, about that time frame. But I don't have low fertility issues with mine. I get probably 90% fertility out of them, at least.
Anybody want to take that one on? What's the best fish food, best quality?
For what?
One that's not full of fillers.
In general,
Like,
just live food's going to be, you can't match quality of live food. But let's face it, some people can't feed live food all the time, and I get that. In my opinion, directly after that would be frozen. If you're going to, in my opinion, if you're going to feed a prepared food, do the what's one that's biologically appropriate. That means no grains, because how many fish do you see eating grains? That's cheap filler. Find something that's nutrition, has high nutrition value, meets the biological needs of your fish, and is fully digestible and is minimally processed. Because anything cooked over 350 degrees destroys the living enzymes in the food, and then they're chemically fortified. In blatant terms, you're feeding dead food. So the best, I'm sure everyone here is in agreement, would be a live food, and then under there, frozen would be best, and then just pick from their good ingredients, minimally processed. That's my take on it, but that's what works for me. May not work for everyone, but it does for me.
To add to what Ed said, not to disagree, for myself, I think it's important to have a good basic prepared food that you base everything else on, so that you're making sure the fish get what they need. And the customer and your client may have been asking you what is their best prepared food to start with. And then you feed live foods and prepared foods and frozen foods with that. And I did a thing with somebody a couple of years ago where we ordered 50 dry foods from different manufacturers. Each of us ordered the minimum quality, and then we would break them in half and then ship them to one another. And we got to try all these different types of foods. And basically what came down to is that the more money you pay, the better the food's going to be. The cheaper the food, if you buy a really cheap carnivorous food, it's going to have lots of fillers, and you'll see the fillers, not because you're giving your fish, things that are not healthy, but it sits on the bottom. The fish don't eat it,
They can't digest, yeah.
Yeah, they know not to eat it, so they let it fall on the bottom, and you end up having to clean up the bottom of the tanks a lot. So the tanks have the least amount of cleanup afterwards, and I found that happened. It was the more I spent for the food, the better it was. And so today I get my foods. I buy them. I buy the prepared mixes from Gemco, where it's always going to be fresh. I feed the Gray's Premium Vegetable Flake, and I feed a thing called it used to be the Natural Seafood, but now they don't have that anymore. Now they have an omni carnivorous food that's also very high quality, and it costs a fraction of what you pay in the pet stores. But usually you have about a 2 pound minimum when you buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to come in hard as a brick.
Yeah, as long as
I remember that, Mike.
I've had guys do that to me too. Yeah, but no, these are always fresh.
Yeah.
That's what I was referring to. You got that order of food that came in. It was supposed to be soft, where you could break it off, and it was hard as a brick.
I had that happen to me with a well-known manufacturer who I won't mention his name, but it's why to this day I still don't buy from him. I spent $180 on a bunch of food that came to me, and it was all hard as a brick. And I gave it to a friend. He said his fish wouldn't go near it. So yeah, and I fought with them for 2 months to get reimbursement or another order, and they never did. I called them like twice a week, and anyway. That's one of the reasons why I started Select Aquatics. So that gives you an idea how long ago it was. To provide good customer service.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that's kind of why we're having this discussion: is get the best one you can.
Yeah.
So use the brine shrimp, use the Daphne, use Infusoria, use everything we've been talking about, and add to it. Change it up all the time.
And the thing about dry food too, I could say to you, I love Tetramin. Tetramin's the best food in the world. La da da da. But you go into a pet store and their bottle of a little plastic thing of Tetramin may have been sitting there for 2 years before you bought it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Another question for Mitchell. Having trouble with Astatus fry. Not surviving, even though she's feeding them 3 to 4 times a day.
What are you feeding them with, Lemmy? And is it like in a? How big is the tank that they're in? Are they able to actually find the food? Because they're tiny.
I want to say they're in one of those fancy blue floating rings.
Oh, okay. What are you feeding them with? Okay,
I'm just going to guess
I see.
uh, microworms.
Yeah.
Microworms and magic co-op food. There she goes.
Yeah. For little tiny cories like that, like we talked about earlier, I really should be better at other live foods. Uh, Wish I was. For some of those like that, baby brine is too large for her. So my cheat, like microworms, should be fine. I know in the cory world, most people that are actually doing their job, unlike me, use microworms as the first food for cories. Um, Someday I'll get there. Um, but I cheat and do like an aged oak leaf and some Java moss because that will generally give them enough things for them to feed off of as long as you're like putting it right on top of them. And if you're doing them in like one of those floating container things, you can definitely like keep it right there. So for the first few days, I'll have like an aged oak leaf sitting on the bottom and they'll be under it and they will be feeding on that all the time. That gets me through the first few days, and then they're large enough to actually use baby brine. If you're doing, it sounds like you might be doing something similar, but I haven't run into problems other than like I don't know that I would feed something like a prepared food to them yet. I would hold off on that. I would I would wait at least until like they get to baby brine, and you can definitely see for a week or two that their bellies are actually becoming orange before I choose to move them to a prepared food. Um, Maybe I don't know that you truly are, but maybe you're producing some extra bacteria from the prepared food that they're not actually able to. The prepared food and the bacteria may actually be killing them. Maybe that's a guess on my part, though. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you.
That's similar to what happened with me when I first started breeding cories. Is I found they would last for a few days and then they were dying off. And what I found it was what I was doing at the time. So that I did exactly what you were saying. I just put a ton of Java moss in with them when they first hatch, and then in a week or so I start feeding baby brine, and that seemed to work for me. And I'm all for what makes things easier. So it just worked for me because I had tried numerous times to spawn cories, and that's what would happen. They would hatch, and then in a day or so, because of what I was feeding, they just weren't getting it. So I just found it a lot easier to use the Java moss. And I just put a ton of it in.
Yep.
Java moss is like one of the best for infusoria.
Yeah.
And oak leaves,
Yeah.
or some kind of leaf. Like that combo is like because the leaf will also give them cover to make them feel more comfortable because it'll give them shade and put the food right there with them too. So it's like a double whammy.
Yeah, it's like first time I've seen this happen to me, Greg. I had two green dragons both kick out all their eggs same time, within a day or so. So I got them in a fluval box and I put a leaf in there and some moss. And now I've got about 70, 80 wigglers on the side. So
There you go.
Cool. Yeah, this is getting toward the end of their breeding season for them here. They stopped breeding for me about the beginning of February.
I got two more caved up. I hope they don't kick them out too.
I've got one more caved up.
I found that the majority of my plecos kicked the eggs out. And I would go in and I'd put them in a separate container with an air stone and some flow through water going through it that I'd have sitting in a tank, and I would raise them in that. I would grind up Cichlid Extreme mini pellets in a coffee grinder and then put that in and mix it, alternate it with frozen brine shrimp, newly hatched brine shrimp. And that got their size on them really quick. And within a week and a half, they were ready to move into a tank of their own. Yep. The Pico fry are pretty easy to raise. They're pretty. Yeah. They're pretty straight. For an egg layer, they're great. Yeah. They're easy to work with. Before I built this breeding setup I was talking about earlier with the Odessas, I was getting to where I was still losing about every third batch. But about one of every 3 batches would crash somehow. And it was just driving me crazy. Nothing worse than promising fish to people than having your batch crash and you don't have them, you know. So,
yeah.
But I do plan on doing a video on that, possibly in another couple months, so I can show that device. It's not that difficult, but it's a 3-tank setup. So.
Yeah, we've been kind of wondering about that.
Yeah.
About what?
How you got that set up.
Yeah. We were already discussing me driving to Denver and being like a little spy and sneaking.
Oh, for the
Odessas.
Yeah, they always welcome. Always welcome, man. Always welcome. The Synodontis 3-tank setup is different than the Odessa 3-tank setup. The Odessa setup is a whole different ballgame, but it's pretty simple and it works. So, and it was cheap. You know, it wasn't difficult to put together. And if any of you guys want a picture of it, I'll be happy to send it to you. And show you
that's
how it
one
works.
thing you'll find, folks. This gentleman will freely share his information. And I think all these gentlemen can tell you.
Yeah, he's not like a lot of the old timers that were gatekeepers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. But we all agree that if we don't share this information, this is how people leave. That's why people leave our hobby, because they're given information that may not work for them and gets them disappointed in it. We love our hobby, and being part of that means that we share what we know and what we've experienced. And this gentleman exemplifies that.
Well, and I want people to share information with me.
Yeah, exactly.
It needs to go back and forth because I haven't dealt with everything.
Yeah, I've been sitting here with my notebook.
Me too.
I've got 6 or 7 speaking engagements set up for this coming year. And I have a thing I send out to people when you want me to have come to speak. And I say in it, my whole goal is to see fish rooms. I'm not interested in seeing your best restaurant or your seaside, whatever. Take me to fish rooms, and I pick everybody's brain. And when I come home, I often make changes in my fish room. Much of my fish room owes itself to a visit to somebody's fish room. Mitchell, I've been to your room, as you know, a couple times, and I've definitely stolen a couple of your ideas. So.
Sure.
A lot of people have stolen a lot of his ideas.
So along that lines, I'm actually working on a new presentation of how to build a fish room, the whats and the whys. So you actually know why I do things, not just like what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I know the last video I seen, which was the one Alex put out when Dean was there. And Dean's mind was blown. You could just see him like,
you could see it in his face.
I did
like,
this.
What?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, when you have a fish room and you set it up and things are going okay, and then you have something happen and you feel terrible about it and you have to make a big change, something has to be torn down and rebuilt, always see that as a positive, because every successive fish room is going to be better than the last.
Learn from it.
You know, simple things like putting at least 30 inches in your aisleways.
Make it so that you can actually pull a tank out and get it out of the racks. Don't build your racks so close together that you're never going to be able to remove a tank without taking everything down.
Yeah, right.
That's a hard lesson to learn when you're trying to cram as many things into the room as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a rack against one wall that's all windows. Why my room is seasonal, and the space between the wall and the back of the tank was only about 20 inches. I think it was 21 or 22 inches. And we had a big hailstorm here last year, and it damaged a lot of our house, and I had to have all the windows replaced. So the window repairman, the window company, comes downstairs in the fish room, and they see all the windows had to be replaced with all the racks right against the windows. And the guy is like, "We can't do this," and I'm like, "I can't do this, I can't move all this shit, And he said, "You don't have a choice." So I took all the tanks down, I had some friends come over, and we moved the racks, and we made it like it was 35 inches now. And it was just enough that they could do the work and replace the windows. And every day it's a positive sigh of relief every time I walk behind those tanks, because I can do it easily,
I remember the first time I was there, you were showing me down the aisles, and we were looking at every tank, and I had to back out of the aisle so that you could get out.
Yeah.
It was I don't know, what was it, 24 inches wide maybe?
Oh, and I never thought my room was that bad. I try to make an effort to keep it more spacious than most, but yeah, that builds up over time. Eventually, it wears you down mentally, and you just stop doing the maintenance you need to do, and yeah. So, since you've been in the room, Curtis, I removed that whole middle rack. There used to be a big rack right down the middle of the room, and I took all of that out. So now the room's nice and open, and you have tanks all around the perimeter, and makes things much easier to work on.
We'll ask Mitchell this question in a minute, but I got a question for you. You freeze all of your brine shrimp instead of feeding it live, right?
Yes.
Some people don't know that. Can you explain why you do that?
So it's always available.
It doesn't have anything to do with the quality or...
When brine shrimp, I usually run a batch of brine shrimp twice a week. It takes me 4 or 5 days, whatever, 3-4 days to run through. I make about 8 trays of brine shrimp cubes at a time, and the shrimp never sits in the freezer frozen for very long. I think that the benefit of having it always available far outweighs the minimal nutritional loss that the shrimp may have experienced.
But I guess where I was going is a lot more people need to do that, because I didn't do it till I saw you do it. And then it was that's a great idea. If I don't have time when I get home from work, I just walk over to the little refrigerator and pop some cubes out.
Yep.
And I didn't pay Petco for it.
And in each of the ice cube trays, you put just enough brine shrimp in each ice cube so that it's a feeding for one tank, which is about a third full of the ice cube. And like I say, I do 2 of those round tubs at a time. They each hold about 2 gallons of water. I do 4 tablespoons of shrimp, and I do that usually about twice every 7 to 10 days. So.
Okay, Lumi. I don't know what happened to the other question. Do you thaw it out before you put it in, or you just throw the frozen block in?
I throw the frozen blocks in.
Yeah, I have to.
So
I rinse.
I do too. And it's only
just my preference.
Exactly. Like I'm the same. I thaw it out only because I just don't like the red cloud that it does to the water. So I know it's not a problem. It's just my thing.
My concern is because I kind of overthink these things, because some of you guys that know me personally know that it's just who I am. I feel like, because I'm a heavy feeder, it's something I do, but it's because when I'm feeding a lot of fish, I want to make sure they're getting their food. When I am feeding frozen, I'm worried that if I don't thaw it and rinse it, and the excess juices from the frozen prepared food you get could elevate nitrates over time. But if you're doing regular water changes, it's not bad. But just me being the neurotic person I am, I kind of worry about that raising nitrates in my tank. So I just rinse it. I prefer to rinse it, but that's just my personal thing. And when I share that with people, I tell them that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. Now also with me, in some things that I feed, like a cube is too much for that tank.
Mhm.
So rather than me like trying to cut a frozen cube, it's more convenient for me to let them thaw, and I can do a pipette and take out as much as I need for that tank.
Mhm.
Oh man, see, I grab an ice cube, I stick my hand over the top of the tank, the ice cube just sticks on the top of the water. I go, the fish know what's going on. I wait till the cube's half gone, and then I plop it into another tank.
There's a lot of ways to do things. It's just what you feel
Greg's ringing the
comfortable with.
dinner bell.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, no, to always have brine shrimp, newly hatched brine shrimp on hand. Oh my God! If you see a new batch of fry, you can put it in right then. You know,
Yeah.
get their bellies full before anybody starts thinking about eating them.
Another question for Mitchell. Why would an entire batch of Trileniatus coriates all not be viable?
Was it a big batch or a small batch? I wonder, because did you end up with like one female or one male actually trigger the spawning, and were they just not good at it? Because sometimes they're not great aims. If you didn't have enough of them involved, then you could potentially just have that she may actually have been egg bound for a while, and they wouldn't be fertilized because the eggs actually were bad and she was trying to get rid of them. Also, have they actually been able to, has it successfully worked before, or was this just one time? Because are you sure you have males and females? Because some fish will lay in eggs to get them out of them even if there's no males around, because they have to do something with it. There's a few different reasons I can think of, but if they have successfully been able to spawn before, and it was for Trileniatus, if it was at least like 50 plus eggs, then did they fungus? Because that would be my next question.
I don't see any more questions in the chat.
Mitchell, I got a question for you, based on what you just said.
Yeah.
I've had a couple customers writing me. I have enough here for my needs, but is it true that you can't find methylene blue anymore?
I don't know. I haven't actually used methylene blue in years. I
Okay.
switched over to alder cones. So
Okay.
methylene blue, going back to making things as easy on myself as I can. Methylene blue, if you don't properly dilute it, by the time the actual fish hatches, then a high enough concentration of it can affect the development of the fry. Like,
Sure.
so you've got to make sure that you actually get it properly diluted before the fish truly hatches. So you can definitely do that there, but with alder cones, for the things that I breed right now, I can let the water be stained brown with alder cones through when they've hatched. Nothing special. I just change water in the container, leave the alder cone in for the entire hatching time, versus making sure I actually get the methylene blue diluted enough by the time that they hatch. So I switched over to alder cones years ago and haven't looked back on it.
I can still get meth blue. My LFS carries meth blue yet.
I find that the mom and pop shops it's easier to find them, but the large box stores aren't carrying things like that. But I agree with Mitch. I agree with Mitchell. I've discovered the cones and I love them. So, alder cones.
I've used methylene blue for 30 years, and the dilution that I use is about a medium sky blue, and you just look for you get used to the right shade of blue with experience, and that always works. Yeah.
Oh no, it definitely works. And like if I were to go back to doing something like angelfish, which I like cut my teeth on breeding with methylene blue, I would definitely use methylene blue. But the things I do now, it's just kind of easy mode for me to just use alder cones.
Right.
And if you're a klutz like me, methylene blue stains.
Yep.
Well, it's the worst. Yeah, it's the worst.
It sustain the silicone in a tank too.
Oh yeah.
Whenever I moved Plico eggs, when a pair kicked them out of the cave, methylene blue was essential. Otherwise, they'd fuck us up. But with the Odessas, I don't use the methylene blue.
Yeah, it was 3D printing shells.
Yeah, I have not done much with them for a while now. Like they're doing their thing, but I have not had a chance to get back to focusing on trying to get their muscle shells to be the way that they like it. And I think now I'm unfortunately like stuck with males only. I've lost some of the females of the bitterlings, and I think right now I'm actually down to just males, which is
That stinks.
awful because like they're not common to get anyway, and the ones I ended up with are really cool, but not common at all anyway. So like I've unfortunately kind of backburnered that project right now while having 15 other projects going on. I will get back to it.
That sounds
but not
familiar.
right now.
What's everybody's opinion on decapsulated brine shrimp?
I once bought a pound of eggs from a guy in a Phoenix club, kept it in his garage, and you know how the temperatures in Phoenix over the summer are. And I brought it home and found, of course, that nothing hatched. And I looked up recipes on how to decapsulate and all that. And I just figured it wasn't worth the trouble, and I gave the can to somebody else who did it. I know people who swear by it, but I've just never really dug into it to know more about it.
Yeah, me either.
Lumi's comment is we're talking about. She turned her sink blue. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Same. My hand, my pants, my table. You get the picture.
Silicone. Yeah.
I had a fish friend. I went over to his house one time, and there was a perfectly circular blue stain on his carpet. And he had a 2-year-old that dumped over like a half gallon of methylene blue.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God. I mean, the only way to fix that would have been to cut the carpeting out and replace it. But yeah, I don't like it for that reason, but it does wash off your hands after 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, Geek Boy's right. If you look at a bottle of meth blue, it stains something.
Well, it's interesting. I work in healthcare. So when I went to work a few times with my hands, like, what are you doing at home? And I had to explain that.
Can you overdose with alder cones and use too many?
I don't know if you can overdose, but every time I've ever actually like hatched any eggs in some kind of container, like anything that's not like a huge tank sort of thing, one alder cone is enough. Like alder cones, like there's a lot of intensity in them. Like they're packed with enough that you really only need one.
I'd be worried about it getting too acidic.
I don't know how much it's going to. So I think people with tannins, I think people have an association that might be incorrect. They think that the color definitely directly associates with like the pH level, and there is some of it, but I don't think it's as drastic as people think. You can have brown stained water that does not have a super low pH. Just depends on what was being released into the water at the time, because the staining is not necessarily the thing that's affecting the pH. It's just all the other things going on that comes with the tannins. So, like just putting an alder cone into a tank isn't going to like drop your pH by like 1 degree, or it's not going to. It's just not that strong, but it can definitely turn it brown.
Well, I was thinking of alder cones more in a sense of bringing down the pH and not as an antifungal.
Yeah, I use them as an antifungal.
Yep.
Not for pH. Is the cheaper, more readily available for me, or not necessarily readily available, more easily to manage than like an Indian almond leaf, because I don't have to like break it up and make sure that it actually will stick down into it. I can just drop a cone in, it'll float and bounce, and it will do its thing.
Same here. I do it for the convenience. I won't lie. I do it for the convenience, and plus, I've successfully hatched cories with them. When I've tried other products, I haven't, and I really do think I don't disagree with methylene blue, but it's very difficult for me to calculate a proper ratio. The alder cone, I put 1 up to 2 in, and I'm golden. So anytime I can make something simple with less likely making a mistake, it's just worked for me.
Stephen P. Brings up a good point about the tannic acid. It takes a lot to move pH.
I'm sitting here looking at my Scarlabatus, and I threw alder cones in there just to try to get them to help breed to turn it brown.
Yeah, and in some things that's a comfort level for them, because it's more cover basically for them. So
yeah, it's not going to hurt them any, so I threw them in there.
Best way to breed lamb chop rasporas?
Don't ask me.
I have never done it, but they might be one of the rasboras that actually spawn on the underside of a leaf.
I've spawned them. They do.
They do. Okay, yeah.
And I also use the method I use for all my tetras. I black out the tank, and I put a lot of tannins in the water. And what I found that was successful for me is you have to use a broad-leafed plant that curves, and they will lay under the egg, under the underside of the plant. So. But from all the tetras, I learned early on, like when you're breeding any types of tetras, and I just kind of do it for any of my rasboras, and it works. I black out the tank, and I do it for a few reasons. The eggs are photosensitive, and what I have found too, the fish are calmer, and they're not getting a lot of activity from the outside in the room itself, and it keeps them calm. And that's how I've been spawning all of my rasboras and tetras.
Well, anybody got anything else they want to bring up? How soft a pH you need to breed them at?
I did mine at a 7.4. But I'm sure a little bit more acid would work. I haven't heard of anyone from the people I know, I haven't really noticed anyone over for 7.4. But for me, like I said, I put a little tannin in the water, and then I blackened out the tank and used a broadleaf plant. They will lay under that broadleaf plant. They'll lay the eggs under the underleaf. So
Okay. And guys, I say we almost 2 hours. I say we call her good there.
yeah, I still have
Thank
to
you, buddy.
feed my fish room.
Fine
Yeah.
with me. Yeah, if anybody's got questions, man, let Mike know or Curtis know, man, and then we'll save them and deal with them next time we do this.
Yeah, I got a couple questions for you backstage too, Greg.
Oh, okay.
Don't run off just yet.
Yeah,
Yeah, go run off.
it won't take long.
Not a
Anyway,
problem.
thank everybody for coming on. Greg, Mitchell, Ed,
Thank
Curtis,
you.
everybody in chat, and all the moderators and everybody. We will see everybody on the next one.
See you.
See you guys.
Take care.